I was in the test kitchen at the Gilded Spoon, carefully whisking a saffron reduction, the delicate aroma filling the air, when my phone buzzed against the cold steel counter. At first, I almost ignored it. Emails were usually inconsequential, but the sender's address made my blood run cold. David at Wentworth Press. I hadn't seen that name in 21 years. The subject line was one word, sharp and manipulative. Family. My hands froze mid-whisk. I wiped them on my apron and opened the email. The words hit me like ice water. Bonnie, your mother and I saw the news about Ethan. We are incredibly proud. We will be attending the Innovator of the Year award on Friday night to celebrate our grandson publicly. It is time to heal. I read it twice, and the words didn't make me cry. They didn't even make me angry. Not really. They made me clinical, calculating, detached. This wasn't a family reaching out to reconnect. This was a performance, a carefully staged public display. And it was about Ethan, not me. I forwarded the email to my husband, Michael, with a text that said only 2 words, handle it. Then I turned back to my stove. The saffron reduction needed my attention, and I refused to let ghosts, literal or figurative, burn what I was creating. Yet my mind drifted. Always back to the library in Boston 21 years ago. The smell of old leather and my father's cigar smoke hung heavy in the mahogany-paneled room. I was 17, my hand trembling as I held out the positive pregnancy test. My father, David Wentworth, didn't yell. Yelling was for people without leverage. His disappointment was quiet, surgical, like a critique of a bad manuscript. That's what you are, he said. A transactional disappointment. The words hit harder than any insult I'd ever known. He explained my pregnancy as if discussing a failed business merger. The marriage he had planned to solidify the Wentworth Press dynasty was ruined by me, by my body, by my existence. My mother, Susan, sat silently under the massive portrait of her great-grandfather, flipping through a manuscript as if I weren't there, complicit in the absence of any human warmth. I realized then that the pain wasn't about pregnancy. It was about their love, or lack thereof. I had been their perfect asset. Excellent grades, the right friends, the right appearances. But the moment I became real, I became disposable. Their love was conditional, transactional, and I had defaulted. He handed me an envelope with $450. That's what you have. Leave tonight. You will not use the Wentworth name. You will not contact us. I stared at the money, knowing it wasn't a gift. It was a contract of exile. That night I didn't sleep in my 4-poster bed. I slept on a cold wooden bench in the Boston Public Garden, clutching my stomach, surrounded by swanboat exhaust and the echo of my own fear. Alone. Completely and utterly alone. Hours later, Michael called. Calm. Efficient. The voice he reserved for legal battles. He told me he blocked their email addresses and numbers. They could no longer reach me directly. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Not quite yet, he said. They had already reached the event organizers, claiming they needed a front-row table for Ethan. And when I checked my mother's Instagram, there it was, a photo from decades ago, captioned to portray pride, heritage, and family legacy, erasing 21 years of silence with a single staged image. Michael's words cut through my swirling thoughts. Bonnie, this isn't about family. This is a classic narcissistic Hoover. They want what Ethan represents. The email, the Instagram post, the gala. It was all coordinated. They weren't coming back for love or reconciliation. They were coming for leverage. I set the phone down. I returned to my saffron reduction, the whisk moving steadily in my hand. Anger, betrayal, and memory swirled together, but I refused to crumble. This wasn't a family drama. This was a pest control problem, and I was the exterminator. I couldn't focus entirely on the saffron reduction. My mind kept drifting back to that cold Boston night, 21 years ago, when everything changed. The public garden was dark, damp, and suffused with the smell of water and exhaust. I was 17, terrified, pregnant, and alone with $450 and no family to turn to. That bench was my bed, the world my enemy. I didn't know how I would survive. And then she appeared. Beatrice. She was in her 70s, small but commanding, with sharp eyes that seemed to pierce through my fear. I flinched, expecting judgment, police, or a stranger with ill intent. But she didn't ask me if I was okay. She just stated a fact. You are not alone. Beatrice was a retired constitutional law professor, a widow who had lost her only daughter years earlier. She looked at me, a desperate teenager with trembling hands, and didn't see a transactional disappointment. She saw potential. She gave me a place in her brownstone, a safe haven, and from that moment became my family. She held my hand while I gave birth to Ethan, guiding me through each sleepless night, each doubt, each terrifying moment with calm wisdom. She became his grandmother, and in truth, the only grandmother he ever knew. I remember sitting at her massive oak desk, surrounded by law books and the lingering scent of her perfume as she told me, "Bonnie, legacy isn't what you inherit in blood. It's what you build by choice." Her words were a revelation. My parents, who had cast me aside like a failed investment, had never taught me anything about courage or building a life from scratch. But Beatrice? She had given me the tools to construct something lasting, something no one could ever take away. And I did. The gilded spoon was my triumph, my proof that love and family were not defined by lineage, but by those who invested in me for who I was, not what I could provide them. Every detail, every recipe, every late-night experiment in the test kitchen was a rebellion against the hollow expectations my biological parents had set. Yet now, after 21 years, they had returned. Not for me, not for Ethan, but for leverage. Michael explained it all in the calm, precise way that made him a master strategist. They weren't reaching out to reconcile. They were using Ethan as a shiny asset to revive their crumbling empire. Wentworth Press was in deep trouble. They missed the digital wave, their stock was plummeting, and they needed a story. A perfect story. A genius grandson, a public display of lineage, a photo op to erase decades of abandonment. And they had someone else on their payroll too. Ryan, my high school boyfriend. The one who had promised forever, then vanished the day I told him I was pregnant. Now he was suing Ethan for intellectual property theft, claiming the accessibility AI was based on concepts we had discussed in high school chemistry. Michael dug through records, uncovering wire transfers from Wentworth Press's holding company. They were bankrolling Ryan to launch a frivolous legal attack. The plan was clear. Social pressure from my parents, financial pressure from Ryan, all aimed at forcing me to submit, to reconnect, to bring Ethan under their control. I sat back, my mind spinning, my hands still coated with saffron and butter. This wasn't just manipulation. It was meticulous, sociopathic strategy. They had engineered every angle, knowing I would never respond emotionally. But they had underestimated one thing. Beatrice had taught me how to survive such people, how to recognize the difference between family and transactional power, how to fight back, not with tears, not with anger, but with clarity, preparation, and vision. Michael looked at me, his expression serious, his voice calm but firm. "Bonnie, this isn't about revenge. It's about strategy. Treat it like a business. They are attempting to lure you in. Don't take the bait. You are protected, legally and morally. Ethan is protected. And more than anything, we know their moves before they make them." I let the words sink in. The emails, the Instagram posts, the gala appearances, they were noise. Calculated noise designed to distract, provoke, and manipulate. But I was no longer 17. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't alone. And I certainly wasn't going to allow them to turn my life into their PR campaign. I turned back to the stove, whisking the saffron reduction with precision. The kitchen smelled of resilience, of patience, of fire tempered by calm. I knew the battle wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for the first time in decades, I felt the clarity that Beatrice had promised. A legacy is built, not inherited. And no one, not my parents, not Ryan, not anyone, would dictate the future of me or my son. The days leading up to the Innovator of the Year gala felt like walking through a minefield. Every call, every email, every Instagram notification carried potential danger. Michael and I spent hours analyzing every move, every detail, trying to anticipate their next play. I had learned over the past 21 years that my parents weren't ordinary people. They were architects of control, and every gesture, every smile, had a purpose. They weren't coming back for reconciliation. They were coming back to manipulate, to perform, and to seize what they believed was theirs. Ethan. Michael explained it like a chess game. The lawsuit from Ryan, my high school ex, wasn't about law. It was about pressure, financial, emotional, public. The goal was to create a problem only they could solve. They had built an entire narrative designed to corner me, to make me feel guilty, and to lure Ethan into their orbit. It was diabolical in its precision. Michael pulled up detailed charts, financial records, and court filings, his fingers flying over the keyboard with practiced speed. The transfer from Wentworth Press's holding company to Ryan's law firm confirmed the obvious. This was a coordinated attack. They were willing to manipulate, threaten, and deceive anyone, including their own children, to reclaim what they considered their rightful legacy. "They are not your family," Michael said, finally leaning back in his chair. His eyes were sharp, unwavering. "They have no claim on you or Ethan. This is a classic Hoover maneuver. Emotional supply. They want you to respond, to feel, to bend. But the leverage is manufactured. Don't give it to them." I clenched my fists. 21 years of abandonment. 21 years of silence. 21 years of absence. All reduced to a single calculated plan. I realized how clever it was. A frivolous lawsuit, a gala appearance, public sympathy, and social pressure. All of it designed to make me doubt myself, to make me feel isolated. But I wasn't isolated. Beatrice's lessons echoed in my mind. Your circumstances do not define you. Legacy is built, not inherited. I remembered how she had given me not just shelter, but guidance, education, and the belief that I could build a life entirely on my own terms. I had learned to see through manipulation, to recognize the difference between genuine connection and transactional interest. Michael and I mapped out a plan. The key was clarity, precision, and patience. I would not react emotionally. I would not engage directly. Everything they attempted would be met with calm, calculated responses. The gala, in particular, would be a test of restraint. My parents' social performance would be staged and polished. They thrived in that environment. Cameras, journalists, crystal chandeliers, the eyes of Boston's elite. They were in their element. But we had the element of truth on our side. And truth, when revealed strategically, was more powerful than any performance. For the first time, I understood the elegance of strategy. This wasn't revenge. This was exposure. This was prevention. The moment I engaged with them emotionally, they would have leverage. The moment I showed anger or hesitation, it would become a weapon. The goal was to strip them of control, to show the world who they really were, without me having to lose my composure. Michael reminded me of another critical factor, the legal protections Beatrice had put in place. Her trust had secured $25 million for Ethan and me, untouchable, protected. And the legal relinquishment of parental rights meant my biological parents had no claim on either of us. They could perform, they could stage, they could sue, but the law and the truth were on our side. I spent the night rehearsing my emotions, preparing for their appearance, and visualizing how I would remain unmoved. Every detail mattered. Every facial expression, every word, every gesture would be under scrutiny. I thought of Ethan and the future we were building, a legacy of choice, not of blood. Every move my parents made was intended to manipulate perception, to convince others that reconciliation was noble. But their motivations were pure self-interest, and I would not allow them to rewrite history. As I finally lay down that night, my mind was a storm of memories and plans. I recalled the park bench in Boston, the fear of being alone, the cold money in an envelope, and the warmth of Beatrice's home. The contrast was stark, but it reminded me that I had grown stronger, smarter, and more resilient. I wasn't that frightened teenager anymore. I wasn't powerless. I had built something worth protecting, and I knew how to defend it. The gala was coming, and they would be ready, but I was ready too. The Innovator of the Year Gala was a universe of opulence and expectation. Crystal chandeliers reflected light like stars, casting a glow on the polished parquet floors. Cameras flashed in a constant staccato, journalists scribbled in leather-bound notebooks, and the walls were lined with Boston's elite, eager to witness brilliance. And there, at table 1, front and center, sat David and Susan Wentworth, practically glowing. The picture of old money elegance. Smiles perfectly timed, nods perfectly executed. The kind of posture born from decades of rehearsed influence. I felt a cold, familiar knot tighten in my stomach. But I reminded myself, they were actors. Their performance was for the cameras, the society pages, the gala-goers. It had nothing to do with me or Ethan. They weren't family. They were predators wearing pearls and tailored suits. Ethan walked onto the stage to accept his Innovator of the Year award. Cameras followed him, flashes illuminating his tailored suit, the award heavy in his hands. Every eye in the room was on him. He took a deep breath and began his speech, polite, measured, expected. But then he veered into the unexpected. "Thank you to the committee," he said, pausing deliberately, letting the room settle. And then he did something that stopped the gala in its tracks. He spoke of the past, of the abandonment his mother endured, of the nights spent on a Boston Park bench, alone, terrified, and pregnant. The room fell silent. The whispers died. The flashes continued, but now cameras weren't capturing fashion. They were capturing truth. He told them about Beatrice, the woman who became the grandmother he never had, who taught my mother how to survive, how to build, and how to reclaim life from the grasp of manipulation. He spoke with unwavering conviction, pointing toward Table 1. The people who had discarded us, who had called me a transactional disappointment, who thought wealth and bloodline were everything. They were frozen. David Wentworth's face went white. Susan's hand trembled slightly as she dabbed at her eye, caught between shame and performance. "This, Ethan continued, his voice steady and commanding, is what true legacy looks like. Not inheritance, not status, not empty appearances. My mother's journey was never about your approval, and my success is not because of your blood. It is because of courage, resilience, and the choice to build something meaningful." Then he held up the award, and with a click of a remote, the screen behind him lit up. Emails, wire transfers, legal documents. The coordinated plan laid bare for every influential attendee to see. Ryan's lawsuit, funded by Wentworth Press. The gala performance, the Instagram posts, the calculated social manipulation. They had all been exposed in full. The room gasped. Whispers turned to murmurs. Cameras zoomed in on faces frozen in shock. I could feel the tension in my own chest. Years of fear, anger, and betrayal condensed into this moment of reckoning. And as the final piece of the plan unraveled on the screen, the reality became clear. They had been trying to control, to coerce, to manufacture guilt. But the truth, the power of choice, of action, of self-made legacy, was stronger than any performance or manipulation. Ethan's voice rang clear across the room. Legacy isn't about what you are given. Legacy is about what you create, what you protect, and who you empower along the way. This award is not just for me. It's for everyone who has been told they are worthless, and yet chose to build anyway. David and Susan sat frozen, helpless in the glare of their own hubris. Their grand entrance, their polished smiles, their calculated narratives, all meaningless now. They had believed in bloodline supremacy, in appearances, in the illusion of control, but the gala had become their own undoing. And in that moment, as the applause surged and Ethan held the award high, I realized something profound. I wasn't just observing history, I was part of it. The truth had been spoken, their power had been dismantled, and our legacy, the legacy we chose, not inherited, was secure. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel anger. I felt something far more powerful. Clarity. The battle had reached its climax, and the outcome was no longer in their hands. It was ours. The applause didn't stop. Cameras flashed like a storm of light, capturing every moment of triumph and truth. The gala had shifted. It was no longer just a celebration of innovation. It had become a reckoning, a revelation, and a declaration. I sat at our table watching Ethan stand on the stage, a crystal award in his hands, his voice steady, unwavering, and commanding. He had dismantled the carefully constructed illusion that my parents had tried to impose. The Instagram posts, the gala appearance, the fabricated narrative of a proud, loving family. All of it had been a performance, a calculated attempt to reclaim something they believed belonged to them. But in this room, In this moment, the truth was undeniable. "Legacy isn't about inheritance," Ethan said, his gaze sweeping over the room, landing briefly on table 1. "Legacy is about what you create, what you protect, and who you empower along the way. My mother and I know what that truly means, and it's not dictated by blood. It's dictated by choice." I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes, not of sorrow, not of rage, but of relief. The suffocating weight of 21 years of manipulation, shame, and silence was lifting. We had faced the past, and we had chosen our own path. Ethan continued, introducing the initiative that would redefine our family's story. "Tonight, I am proud to announce the formation of the $25 million Beatrice Accessibility Fund, named for the woman who became the grandmother I never had, who saved my mother when she had nothing, and who taught us that resilience, courage, and generosity define legacy, not wealth or bloodline. This fund will provide scholarships, mentorship, and seed funding for innovators who have been told they are worthless, but who are ready to build their own legacies." Gasps and murmurs echoed through the room. Cameras zoomed in on faces frozen in shock, whispers trailing across the marble floors. David and Susan Wentworth sat motionless, their carefully curated personas shattered. Their gleaming image of benevolent grandparents had dissolved under the weight of truth. They had tried to control, to manipulate, to coerce, and failed spectacularly. The power of choice, the legacy we built for ourselves, was stronger than any bloodline, stronger than any fortune, stronger than any pretense. I realized then that Beatrice had been right. Circumstances did not define us. We had the power to write our own stories, to shape our futures, and to uplift others along the way. I looked at Ethan, standing tall, confident, and unshakable, and felt a surge of pride that had nothing to do with wealth or recognition. It had to do with survival, courage, and integrity. We had reclaimed our narrative. We had taken back control of our lives. We had turned betrayal into empowerment. As the applause washed over us, I felt Michael's hand brush against mine. His calm presence, unwavering support, and strategic brilliance had guided us through the storm. Together, we had weathered 21 years of lies, manipulation, and abandonment. And together we had emerged victorious, not in spite of the past, but because we had chosen to rise above it. The gala continued around us, but I was no longer concerned with the flashing cameras or the murmurs of society elites. I had learned something far more valuable. The true measure of legacy was not the recognition of others, nor the preservation of an old name. It was the impact we made, the choices we embraced, and the lives we touched through our actions. In that historic ballroom in Boston, I understood the ultimate lesson. We were not defined by the people who tried to discard us. We were defined by our courage, our vision, and our unwavering belief in what we could achieve. And with the Beatatrice Accessibility Fund, that belief would ripple outward, touching countless lives, creating opportunities where there had once been despair. For the first time, I felt free. Free from fear, free from obligation, free from the manipulations of my biological parents. The past had been acknowledged, the lies exposed, and the truth celebrated. And as I looked at Ethan holding the award, I realized something profound. The legacy of choice, the legacy we built with courage and love, was unbreakable. Tonight, the world witnessed not just an award, but a revolution, a declaration that power, legacy, and family are not inherited. They are created. And for the first time in decades, I allowed myself to feel pure, untainted pride. We had reclaimed our story, and no one, no parent, no ex, no opportunist, could ever take it away.